Hello everyone, how is your 2021? So in this video we will be starting on our game project. And as you can see, or as you probably guess, we're doing the Pong game. Now we're going to be doing a little remix on this Pong game. So for those of you who don't know what the Pong game is, you can go to this website right here, ponggame.org, and you can try out this game. This is the Pong game right here, and this is what we'll be creating. We will be creating a remix of this, and hopefully we will be making a server so everybody can play against each other one day. So this is a game we'll be creating, and as you can see right now, I'm getting absolutely obliterated. I cannot, for some reason, move. But this is a game we'll be creating, and it's a game that's been out since 1972. So you can also check out this video right here, and these links will be in the description, so you can check out that in your convenience. But I would like to explain the remix of my game. So pretty much this drawing right here, you got paddle 1, paddle 2, and you got the ball, and you got this little circle right here that represents like a power-up item to collect, and whichever player collects a certain amount of power-up collectibles will receive like a advantage over the other player. So maybe like player 1 would move faster with his paddle, or maybe he could hit the ball quicker so he can score on the other player. So that's pretty much the basic twist of our Pong game, and I hope to make this a multiplayer game where we can have our own server and play each other. So that's pretty much the gist of it. So what we'll be using to create this Pong game, we will be using the Sdl library, and basically that's a development library that provides low-level access, and it's used for games. So this is what we'll be using, and since I am using Windows, we will be using this link right here, or if you're using Mac, you'd be using this link. So I click onto this link, and it downloads extractable file, and once that's downloaded, you just open it or extract it. I've already extracted, so I'm going to just show you what's inside the folder. We'll be using this include directory and this lib directory. We'll be using that inside our Microsoft Visual Studio, which I would recommend downloading if you haven't already. I'll probably make a separate video on how to download Microsoft Visual Studio. But what we're going to be starting with is an empty project. Once we open Microsoft Visual Studio, we want to create a new project. And for now, it's going to be empty. And what we'll call this project is Modern Pong. Or you can call it however you want. I'm going to call it Modern Pong, because Pong came out in 1972. And just create your project. And once you create your project, you want to create a file called, this is going to be our main. You're going to create a file that holds our main method, and the main method is where the program runs initially. So once you do that, you just click add, and this is our file where we'll be adding our main method. So as you know, the main method returns an int, and we're coding in C++ for those who don't know yet. So the main method always returns an integer. And we're going to be using the Stl library. So first off, we want to change this 86-bit to 64-bit, since we're going to be using 64-bit library from Stl. And click on the Pong project that you have and select properties, and then you want to click on the C++ tab and general, And it's going to be asking you for the additional include directories. This is where you use that directory, the include directory in the Stl folder that I was talking about moments ago. And I just put it somewhere where I know I could find it. So it's in my third parties folder, and it's in the Stl folder, Stl 2. And you just use this include folder right here, and you just select it, and you click OK. And that's it in that tab. And then you want to click on the linker and click on general again, and it'll ask you for additional library directories. You use that lib folder that you downloaded from Sdl. And you go into the same folder, in my folder in this case, you click on Sdl and you use this lib directory, and we're using 64-bit, so that's why we changed it right up here. And you just select. And next you go to input. So this is where we'll be including, this is where we'll be actually typing in the lib files we're going to be using inside this lib folder right here. And we will be using this file and this file. Two files I'm clicking on, stl2.lib and stl2main.lib. So going back, that's what we have to type in, stl2.lib, stl2main.lib. And you click OK, and then lastly you click on systems, and you want to set your subsystems to this setting right here. And once you do that, you just click apply and OK, and we're ready to use our Sdl library. And first off, we're going to be creating a window to start off. So first of all, to use the Sdl library, you gotta use #include Sdl header. So now we're ready to use the window and the Sdl functions to create our window. But first, we need a game loop, so our screen can continuously be displayed. So every game has a game loop, and while the game is running, so the game is running, I'm going to pseudocode this for those who don't understand what I'm talking about. So while the game is running, we want to handle any events like inputs. Maybe the player X's out the screen. We want to update objects in the game like entities, player, etc., like their position, and we want to draw to the screen. So draw the updated positions, backgrounds, etc. So while the game is running, this is what is going to be happening. And then while the game is not running, we want to be able to clean up. So for those of you who haven't coded in C++, it gives you a lot of control over memory. So this is what we'll be doing. We'll be cleaning up and freeing up some memory, deallocating. And we're going to be making a game class to handle all these methods, these functions right here. So we'll add a class, and we'll call it, I'm going to call it Pong class. You can call it anything you want. So we click OK. And this is our class right here. And it also has a header. This is our header file right here, where we'll be adding our methods, so to speak. And I like to just do this where I would add public protected private, just in case I may go back and add some methods and variables that need to be any of these keywords right here, public, private, or protected. So the first method what we'll be adding is we'll be adding the constructor, and we'll make it public, of course, so we can access it inside the main method and call it. So to do this, you just type in the name class of the name of the class, and we'll be adding the deconstructor, which is used to delete the object after you've used it. And the advantage of using Microsoft Visual Studio is that you can highlight a word and you can create the method automatically into your CPP file. So this is a method, this is our constructor we're going to be using. So it automatically creates the method inside the CPP file or the constructor. If you just right click on the highlighted word and you just click on quick actions refactoring and create the definition of the deconstructor in CPP. And our next method we were planning on making is handle events, update, and draw the screen. So to do that, we just name the method. So in this case, it's going to return, we're going to be creating handle events, so it's going to be returning void, and we're going to call it handle events. And then next was draw to screen or update. We're going to be doing it in order. So update and void draw to screen. And let's be consistent here. These are our methods that we create, and for the most part all of them return void. So again, we want to refactor and create these definitions. And we will, like I said, we will be making a video in the future on how to download Microsoft Visual Studio so you guys can code using C++. Oh, and I forgot one more thing, is we want to be initializing our game when we start, setting up everything for the game. So that's another method right there, and we're going to be calling that before we get to the while loop. So I gotta make sure that we handle that properly as well. And like I said, once the game ends, we're going to be cleaning up everything, freeing up some memory, deallocating it, however you call it, so that we can save some memory and not waste it. So quick actions refactoring, create definition, there you go. And lastly, we want to have another method to check if the game is running. So this will be our last method. And for now, it'll just return. We're gonna create a variable down here called isGame. You just call it game running. So our private variables, we're gonna start off by making a variable that we're supposed to return in the method isGameRunning. I think I spelled it right. Pong Game running. Oh, I always put the semicolon right there. Still give me an error. Hold on, let me just copy that. Oh, right, we're returning a boolean, so change that to boolean. My fault right there. And this class right here is going to be creating our game screen. So we want to include Sdl. We want to include the Sdl header file. So we can use variables and functions and all that good stuff. So this is our class where we'll be creating our Sdl window. And you just type in Sdl. We have a pointer to an Sdl window. And we're going to call it window. And we're going to have a pointer to a Stl renderer. And we're just going to call it renderer. Just because it's just convenient. You call it whatever you want, I don't care. And this is our window, and this is what we're going to be using to render to our window. So these are our variables, private variables in our Pong class or Pong Game class. And we have our methods. Now we need to go on to the implementation of our methods. And actually, I was thinking we could have a struct for our window properties, like the width, height, and all that stuff, and the position of our window. So let's add that real quick. And we'll make the screen width 800 pixels, that is. And the screen height, we can make that 600 pixels. And the screen X position, where it be located on our screen, we'll center it. So you can use the Stl window, I believe it's called window position centered. And for the Y position, you can use the same thing. This will just center our window in the middle of our screen. So just copy that. And we can add a title. And we'll go over struct in a tutorial one day. And we'll just call it Modern Pong, or you call it however you want. This is the name of our game. And we can add a boolean full screen, whether we want this game, the screen to be full screen or not. And we'll just say false for now. And we'll add like a variable that we can use for a struct. So we create a struct in the Pong Game header file, and now we're ready to implement all these methods. Draw screen, clean, and update in init game. So in the init game, what we want to do is set up our Sdl so we can use all its functions and properties and such forth. So to do that, we'll have an if statement called Sdl init that will just initialize everything for us, so we can go ahead and create our window and our renderers and everything. So we use this Sdl init everything as a parameter, and we check if it's equal to 0. If it's equal to 0, then it was able to successfully initialize all the subsystems in the Sdl library. So for now, we're going to be using a namespace called std because I don't feel like typing out. And we will explain namespaces in detail in the future. But for now, we're just going to be printing out subsystems have been successfully initialized. And since we're printing out, we also got to include the IO stream. So it allows us to print out stuff onto the screen. And there you go. So once everything's been initialized, we can go ahead and create our game window. And we're going to be using our window private property. And there's this function called create Stl create window, I believe. Nothing about Visual Studios. It allows IntelliSense, so it knows what you're trying to type in. So we call our struct window props. This is what we'll be using to access these variables in the struct. So window props dot, and the first parameter the Stl create window method takes is I believe even tells you a constant char pointer. So a pointer to a char, and it's called title. And you got the integer x, integer y, which is the position. So you got the width, you got the height, which is the width and height of the screen, and you got the flag for whether or not you want a screen to be full screen or not. So what we'll be doing is we'll just be using the window prop struct game title property, and next is the position. So just use the window props screen x position down there. And this is why I like Visual Studios, because it easily allows you to type in stuff without actually having to type in stuff. I'm kind of a lazy programmer, I guess you can say. So you got the window. I'm sure a lot of people can relate. You got a window props. Next is the width and height. So you just type in width. Window props dot height, screen height, and lastly you got the full screen, but it takes in a unsigned integer, unsigned 32-bit integer. So we cannot use our last property full screen because it's a boolean. So what we can do instead is create an integer flags and set it equal to 0, and then we can have an if statement to check if we wanted to check the boolean value of our full screen. So in this case we set it to false. So we could say window props dot full screen. If it's check it if it's equal to true. Then if it's equal to true, then we can change the value of this variable flags right here. We can set it equal to Stl window full screen. So 0 represents not full screen, and when you set flags equal to Stl window full screen, it'll probably change the value to like 1 or something. So now we can use flags as the last parameter of this method, and we set up our window. But to actually check if our window has been created successfully, we can make an if statement to do that. So if window, then we can see out successfully created window. And inline. Inline just means break or new line. And then next is our renderer. So we want to initialize our renderer, and we create that by using Sdl create renderer method. And we'll pass in our window and the index, I believe, and the flag. We'll set that to 0. And for those of you who are not sure what these methods are doing, you can check out or go to the Simple Direct Media or libsdl.org, and you can type in, or not that, you can type in wiki.libsdl.org, and you can go API by name, and you can find. So for those of you who aren't sure about how these methods work, you can go on to wiki.libsdl.org, and you can click on API by name. In this case, we're using methods called create render, so you can just control F that, and you can try to find that create renderer, and you can just click on it and see and read the description. So use this function to create a 2D rendering context for a window, and that's what we're doing, so we can be drawing stuff onto the screen. So that's just your reference right there if you don't understand what's going on. So back to what we were doing. We create our renderer, and now we can check the renderer. We can check if it has been successfully created. If it has, we can print out successfully create renderer. And we're done with that. And so once all this is true, once everything has been true, and actually we don't want this curly bracket right here. We want it right here. So if it's able to initialize everything, then it will call all these methods, try to create the window, try to create the render. Else, if it hasn't successfully initialized everything, then we can set is or game running to false. Don't run the game. But if it's able to make it all the way at the bottom, we can set game running to true. Or if it's able to execute this if statement, then we should set game running to true. So that's pretty much it. Now we're moving on to other methods, handle events. And basically what this method will be doing is checking if the user clicks out of a window, then we should probably end the game. You know, that's logical, right? So there's this class called Stl event, and we can call it event, and we want to poll the event so that we can check that the user has clicked out, whether the user has clicked out of a window. And we pass in the location of this variable event. We'll go more in depth on what these operators mean. This is the ampersand operator, and that just basically returns the address of this variable. So let's add a switch statement, and we'll use the type property of the event, and we're checking if we have quit or exit out of a screen. So that's represented by Stl quit. So if we have exit out of screen, then we can set is game running or game running equal to false. And as with every case you want to break, and we can explain what all this means in the future, but not now. And usually there's a default case in which if none of these cases were executed, it goes to default. So we're pretty much done with that method. And for now, we won't do anything to update since we really don't got anything to update. We don't got like a player, we don't got like a paddle or a ball to update. And render or draw the screen, we really don't need anything for that right now. What we can add for now is the Stl Render Clear. So what this will do is on each update, it will clear the screen and render something new to the screen. And we'll pass in our renderer. And we want to show our renderer. And we do that by, or show what we draw by calling render present. And we pass in renderer again. And this is, in between here, this is where we'll be adding things to render onto the screen. And lastly, we want to be able to clean up our mess that we made, aka free up the memory. So to do that, we just call Stl destroy window. This will destroy our window object, which is a pointer, I believe. Now we'll explain what pointers are. Pointers are really important for C++. Basically, a pointer is kind of like an array, with the exception, there's many exceptions, but one of the main differences between a pointer array is that a pointer stores memory addresses. An array just stores like numbers or doubles. It can store primitive types or just data types that you created. But essentially, those two are kind of similar with minor differences. A pointer a pointer is mainly dynamic, so you can change the size of a pointer. An array is fixed, has a fixed size. So we'll explain all this stuff in the future. But pointers are really powerful and important in C++. So we'll be using some pointers. And that's pretty much it in the clean method. So we destroyed the window, we destroyed the renderer, and we quit out the the window, and we'll print out in game. So that's pretty much it. We pretty much set up our Pong Game class, and now we're ready to render our window. So, but first, before we render our window, we want to create our Pong Game class. So to do that, we have to include it into this file right here. And since Stl header file is already included in the Pong Game header, we can delete that. That will cause some problems. And we can go ahead and create our Pong Game class. And we're going to make it a pointer. Call it game. For now, we'll just set it to null pointer. and we're ready to initialize it. So with pointers, you use the dash and the arrow to call methods or get properties, and we initialize our game. So in our loop, while the game is running, so we already create a variable called, we already create a method called isGameRunning. So we can just call that from the game object that we just created, and we're going to handle events. So we already have a method for that, and call handle events. We call that, and we have update. Call updates, and lastly, draw to screen. Right there, and you replace this with clean. So now I've got one other thing, and that is we can set the color of our screen so we can actually see, like, we'll set it to white. So this is actually, you know, we'll set it to, yeah, we'll set it to white. 255. 255. 255. 255. This is the color our screen is going to be set to, is white. And now we can go ahead and save everything, and we can go ahead and run. And this is setting up our window. So everything works. You should see that. And we get build errors. Oh, right. So we get a linker error, and we forgot one other thing. We have to add parameters into this main function, otherwise we get linker errors. That's a SDL, just an SDL thing right there. So now it should work. Oh, and lastly, one other thing is that we're supposed to include the dynamic link library into our project. So this is what we're supposed to be including. So we just copy that and go back to our project and see if we can paste it into there. Nope. So what we'll have to do is we'll have to, let me go to Windows real quick. Third parties. Lib. Let me just drag that into. So yeah, we have to include the dynamic link library in order for us to use the SDL. So now we're ready. Should work. Or not. What's going on? Okay, so now that it's working, we are getting another error. Don't quite know what it is. So we'll fix that. But basically the problem is Visual Studio, there's a little bit bug when you try to copy from the folder directory directly into the Visual Studio. What I just do is I go directly to where the project is, and I include the SDL2.dynamic link library, the DLL file. I put it into the where our project is, Modern Pong. Put it straight into that, and it works, but we got another bug that we got to fix, and I don't quite know what that is. Window props. Okay, guys, the mistake was I did not call the constructor. So therefore, what's happening was that when we call in a game and we were trying to use the window props struct, we were trying to use the properties of the window props, it wasn't quite initialized. The struct wasn't quite initialized, so it was not running my game. So now we can just uncomment out everything, and to do that in Microsoft or Visual Studios, I think it's Control. There's a shortcut. I think it's called. I think you use Control KU. Something. But I don't know. But just delete those comments, and our game should be run. Our window should be displayed. So yes, this is our game window, and you can change the color. And to do that, you can go into the Pong Game implementation, and you can just, change up some numbers. Get creative here, get fancy. And try to run it. See what color we get. Purple. Sweet. So that's the end of the video, and we've successfully created a game window with trial and error. And the next video will probably be rendering the paddles into the screen and getting the ball into the screen. So that's it. Hope you guys have a nice day. Peace out.